Hey guys, it's Tim Schieser for TechSpot, and this is the Sony Xperia Z1, a phone which in many ways improves on the Xperia Z that was released at the start of this year. The device features the same 5-inch 1080p display that was seen on the Xperia Z, and also comes with the same IP58 waterproofed body, although this time the polycarbonate frame has been swapped out for one that's aluminium. Internally, we're seeing a Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 SoC, which nowadays is the top-end chip that you can get in Android devices, and also there is 16GB of internal storage, complemented by a micro SD card slot, and you'll find 2GB of RAM, LTE, and Wi-Fi 802.11 AC. As you'll notice at the top here, there is a brand new camera inside the Z1. It's a 20.7 megapixel 1 2/3 inch sensor combined with Sony's new G lens, which is essentially an f2.0 aperture combined with a 27mm effective focal length. This device runs Android 4.2.2 out of the box, although I believe it will be upgraded to 4.3 at some time in the future. And internally there's also a 3000 mAh 11.4 watt-hour battery. Onto my actual impressions of the device, and immediately you'll notice that this phone is essentially styled the same way to the original Xperia Z, although it's a little bit thicker, coming in at 8.5mm as opposed to around 7mm that you saw, although that does allow it to pack in that bigger battery and also the brand new camera at the top. Also, what's changed is the polycarbonate shell that went around the edges and such has been switched out for a new aluminium one. It does give it a bit more heft, but it feels much nicer, gives it a premium feel, and it complements those glass panels that you find on the front and the back of the device. I am a little bit concerned about the glass that is used on the front and the back of this device. As we've seen with iPhones, if you drop them in certain ways, either the front or the back can crack, and that can be an expensive repair bill. It is Gorilla Glass, but still there is that slight chance, which leaves me a little bit concerned about the design, but it feels really nice in my hand. Despite the fact that it is that sort of squarish rectangular design with little tapering, it does actually feel pretty comfortable in my hand, and it looks great and complements the software well, so props to Sony on the design front there. Taking a look around the device, and you'll notice for the first time on an Xperia Z-like phone, we have the 2-stage camera button, which really helps for that 20 megapixel camera. There's also a volume rocker here, as well as the power button, and as you might notice here, there is a flap. Underneath that you'll find the SIM card slot. Turn the device around to the other side, and you'll find here the micro SD card slot and the USB port. Both of these are covered, like the SIM card slot, for the water protection. You do need to keep those covered if you are planning to submerge the device. Here's also a dock connector, which I think looks a little bit strange, but that is of course Sony's choice. On the top of the device you'll find the 3.5mm headphone jack up there, and on the bottom there is a speaker grill as well as a charm little thing if you like doing that stuff to your phone. On the top of the device up here you'll find a notification LED as well as a speaker grill, and there's several microphones placed around the body. Taking a look now at the back, and you'll see that 20 megapixel camera at the top. There's also NFC capabilities inside as designated by that logo, and there's just several other bits of branding on that glass panel at the back. While continuously opening and closing the flaps on the side here, it gets a little bit annoying every time you want to have to charge the phone or put in the data cable, but what it does do is keep the phone waterproof, and for the first time, thanks to that dedicated camera button here, when you submerge the device in water you will actually be able to use it as an underwater camera, which is great to see. Moving right along to talk about the display, and this is the exact same panel that was seen in the Xperia Z, so there are no improvements whatsoever in this department from the Xperia Z at the start of the year. What this means is that you do get the same 1080p panel, which is extremely crisp, and that 441 pixels per inch allows really good resolution on this panel. You'll be able to watch 1080p videos natively. Text looks fantastic, as crisp as paper and all that sort of stuff that you're familiar with on these sort of flagship phones at the moment. And all that, you'll be not disappointed with the resolution in any way on this phone. The color quality is also pretty good as we're flicking through some photos here. It's reasonably accurate and true to life. I wasn't too disappointed with this aspect, although it's not quite as vibrant or as good looking as I've seen on some other panels like the LG G2 Galaxy S4, HTC One, those sort of phones. Not quite as good as that, but still above the sort of low-end panels that you'll find on some of the, the lower-end devices on the market. So as we're flicking through some of the images here, this display is enhanced by something called the X-Reality Engine, which is Sony's software color enhancer and quality enhancer that you can enable and disable in the settings. What this does, it makes the colors look a little bit more vibrant and better in photos and videos, but it doesn't work across the entire operating system. And what that means is that you're left with not as good colors on the home screens, in the browser and things like that. And I just wish that maybe Sony could have implemented it across the entire operating system as something in the firmware rather than something in the software. I'm not really sure how possible that is, but it would have made this display a little bit better than it is, and maybe would have brought it up to the same quality levels as the G2 and HTC One. Unfortunately though, the major downside to this panel is the viewing angles, which quickly degrade as you're sort of turning it off angle, and when it's sitting on desks and things, it is actually reasonably hard to look at because the brightness increases and overall the panel washes out, which is not great to see. It's extremely accentuated here when you're just sort of, this is the quality of the panel when it's straight on, and as you rotate it down, you quickly lose quality and it becomes washed out. And as you can see, when we're rotating it here, there's a difference in contrast and things, which is really weird to see. Anyway, that is the major downside of this panel, and that's why it's probably a little bit below average compared to other flagship devices. Moving on to the performance of the device, and this is one aspect where you won't find anything to complain about because that Snapdragon 800 processor is blazing fast. It's a 2.3 GHz quad-core CPU combined with an Adreno 330 GPU and a variety of radios, and of course 2 GB of RAM, 16 GB of internal storage. It's all in here, and that wonderful micro SD card slot that we all love. Using the operating system is absolutely blazing fast. There is no lag here to speak of. Even doing things such as quickly opening the settings, everything opens in a flash. You can go back to the home screen, you can launch Google Now like this, everything launches very, very quickly, and we can quickly just switch between apps, something that I used back in the past. Even such as a game like Dead Trigger will load pretty much instantly on this device, and you'll be getting absolutely fantastic performance. So what we're going to do here is play a small amount of Dead Trigger 2 just to show off the graphical prowess of the Adreno 330 GPU, and I think you'll be extremely pleased with what you get here. This game, which is reasonably graphically intensive, runs absolutely fantastically here on this device. There's absolutely no lag, lighting effects look great. We're running this at absolutely full settings, rendering at 1080p, and there is no lag whatsoever. You'll be perfectly happy with everything about the graphical performance of this device. We'll give a quick run through of the software on this device, but really there isn't much to talk about because Sony has basically just skinned the software and there's really not a huge amount to see. We've got our standard home screens. It's a 4x4 grid. We can long press, we can add widgets and stuff like that. Through a few taps away we can see all the widgets that are included. You can drag those onto your home screens and stuff like that. The notification pane here has your quick toggles up the top. You can switch these out and include some new ones if you want, but the notification pane is pretty basic. Taking a quick look at the lock screen, and it's basically just your swipe thing. Swiping across here, you've got widgets. You can also quick launch the camera on the other side. It's all pretty basic stuff. Taking a look at some of the applications on this device, and basically what you're left with are skins of the stock Android applications. For example, looking at the calendar here, it's basically just a calendar. There's nothing too exciting here. There's not any new feature additions. Scrolling through contacts is basically just your contact list. Nothing too exciting there. You know, going into your album, it just shows your photos that you've taken. Again, there's no real new features there to sort of explore. We've got apps such as Notes, and we've got a sketch application. We've got a few Sony specific things. We've got tasks. We've got a music identifier. We've got the Walkman application. All of these are pretty much, you know, the same as what you've seen on other devices. You can play your music. Just the functionality seems to be a little bit basic compared to other Android devices, which are including a whole array of new features. But of course, some people are perfectly happy with that basic sort of feature set. Of course, you can easily dive straight into the Play Store and find a whole bunch of new applications to enhance your device experience. So I probably recommend that you do that with some of the apps. There's a lot of Google apps installed in here. Of course, we've got Chrome as the stock browser, we've got Gmail, Maps, all that sort of stuff. Taking a quick look into the settings, and basically the only thing that's been included over stock Android are these Xperia connectivity features you'll see here. You can use the device as a media server or play content from your own home server. You can use DualShock 3 wireless controllers here. Basically, you just have to plug it in with a USB cable briefly, and then you can use it over Bluetooth. You can mirror your screen. All that stuff is pretty cool if you find it useful, but digging through some of the other settings here, such as sound, it's pretty basic. Display, pretty basic. Again, there's just not really that many new features to see here. We are running, of course, Android 4.2.2 there. So yeah, it's basically stock Android with a skin. There's not really that much else to say about the Xperia Z software, other than I was personally a little bit disappointed that there weren't cool features to sort of use and explore, but for the majority of users, I don't think that's too much of an issue. The best way to check out the camera quality on this device is to check out sample shots from the full written review. Links to that are in the description below. But we will show a couple of quick images that you can see the 20.7 megapixel resolution. To see, it looks pretty fantastic, especially when you're shooting in perfect conditions. You'll get some really great shots out of this device, and you'll basically be able to completely remove the need for a point and shoot camera. This will do everything that you need in a camera, essentially. We'll take a quick look at some of the camera settings here, and the thing that strikes me first is that there's two shooting modes that you'll most likely be using most of the time. One is Superior Auto, which chooses the automatic settings for you. It optimizes everything, but it only shoots in 8 megapixel mode in 16:9 aspect ratio, so that is a downside. The 8 megapixel images do look pretty good, but you're not getting that full 20 megapixel resolution. So what you do is you need to switch over to manual mode, which is a little bit disappointing that you have to do that and you can't use the auto mode. Also, you don't have an HDR mode when you're shooting in 20 megapixels. That is only available when you shoot at 8 megapixels and below, and also you don't get scene selections. But still, you've got that dedicated camera button at the top. You can simply press it, take a photo. It's all really quick. There's a couple of other shooting modes you've got here in this sort of app selection thing, which you can enhance by checking out some other applications for the camera, similar to what's on the Nokia Lumia devices actually. But some of the cool things we've got here are time shift burst. For example, if something happens just a little bit before you press that shutter button, you will actually be able to go back in time a little bit and see that action shot taken as a burst just before you manage to press that shutter button, which is very handy and kind of cool. Also, we've got here, which I thought was pretty hilarious, is this AR effect mode. So what this AR mode does is it basically puts these random 3D things on the screen like this frickin' dinosaur. It's really strange, and I'm not really sure why it's on there. But again, you can just take photos like you've been in a dinosaur fun park. So whatever the advantages to that mode are, I'm not quite sure, but it is kind of cool to sort of flick around and see that stuff. You've got your standard picture effects, panorama and other stuff like that. So it's a fairly robust camera, and I think that you'll find the features on there quite good. At the end of the day, the standout feature from the Sony Xperia Z1 is that 20.7 megapixel camera. Replaces the need for a point and shoot. It's got great image quality, and everything like that is perfectly what you want. I was also happy with the waterproofing and the general design of the phone, and of course the performance is absolutely top notch. Unfortunately, the display lags a little bit behind other competing devices, and that's something to think about. If you're, for example, tossing up between the Galaxy S4 and this, or the LG G2 and this, even the Nexus 5, stuff like that, this display is a little bit behind. Also, the battery life wasn't as good as I was expecting from 3000 mAh. The LG G2 in my test lasted 13 hours, this lasted 8.5, with pretty much the same sort of specifications in there. So that's just something to think about. Also, the device is a little bit heavier than the Xperia Z, a little bit thicker. These are all things to consider, and the software really adds nothing to the Android experience. It is basically a skinned version of stock Android. So while there are some advantages to this device, namely that camera and the performance, it isn't as competitive as you might have hoped up against the G2, the Galaxy S4, HTC One, Nexus 5, all which have a ton of cool features, top-notch hardware, stuff like that. There are just those some minor issues and niggles, mainly that display, which Sony hasn't improved on from the Xperia Z, and that does detract a little bit from the overall experience of using this device. But if you do get it, I think you'll be reasonably happy with what you've got, and it should last you the entire distance, especially from that fantastic performance. So definitely check out the full written review to see more details on this device. Again, links to that in the description below. If you want more cool content and reviews in the future, do subscribe to this YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter at TechSpot and me personally at ScorpusV. I'm Tim Schieser, and this has been a TechSpot video review.